So today we will do the week 12 topic, which is environmental perceptions, attitudes, and behaviors. So as I introduced last week, the support of ordinary people for government policy making about environmental issues, and also civil society activities through the environmental movement organization. The success of their activities or the success of government policy in action, that all depends upon how much they can receive from the ordinary people. How can they receive support from the ordinary people? So in that sense, we will look at ordinary people, lay people, how they consider environmental issues, how they perceive environmental problems and so on, and in what way they behave in an everyday life, and what attitudes they hold regarding environmental issues. So for that topic, I mentioned first those terms that are used to refer to the collectivity of people, and then I mentioned some references by which individuals of a society, they belong to different groups of categories. And then I mentioned whether those different categories of membership that affect individuals to consider environmental issues or environmental problems differently. And then I will present you some empirical analysis findings. Empirical analysis means that you collect data from your research subject, and then you analyze, and then you know the reality empirically. So I present some empirical data analysis results, and then we think about what implication the data output, the data analysis that represent to us for thinking about ordinary people's concern about environmental problems and their perceptions and attitudes and behaviors regarding environmental problems. And then I conclude for the topic for today. So collectivity of people. So there are many different terms to refer to the collectivity of people. What I'm saying, collectivity of people, when more than two individuals get together, there are several terms to refer to them. Sometimes people considered as taxpayers. It has a economic implication. So with each government needs tax collection for their budgeting, planning their budgeting for running a country. So sometimes people are considered as taxpayers, and sometimes people considered voters. In its political implication. So you can exercise your right to choose any representatives that are involved in deciding important things, like politicians, whether it's a local basis or national basis. Those people who are involved in deciding important things, you can choose them. You can choose them as a voter. So you can exercise your right as a voter to choose who can be representative in a political era, whether it's parliament members or your local politicians and so on and so on. And citizens is also a political term. So it's, you are given some right to exercise your right, your political rights. So like for voters, you can, as a citizen, you can influence political area that involve many important decisions to be made. So as a citizen, by making full participation in by influencing those political arenas, you can be an active citizen. And public, as opposed to private, there are, when there's a lot of people together, sharing the same space, not at their home, but outside of their home, there are open space like university space or metro space. There are some, it's called public space. So you can, as contrast to private, sometimes people consider it as a public, And also simply people are considered the members of society. And sometimes collectivity people are considered as a population. It's a quantity term. So it is used to gauge the size of a country in terms of how many people live in a certain the geographical area that is a country. Some countries has a big land, large size, but then very small population. And some countries land is very small, but there's a large population, and we call that a population density is different. So sometimes collectivity people are considered as a population, and if you know the population size for its different region, how many people occupy certain space, you can imagine some other things, in what way their life is organized, on a daily basis, so on. And sometimes collectivity people considered as a crowd and mass. So, for example, like people collecting in a stadium for watching football games or concert, we call them crowd. We do not call them like taxpayers, voters, so on and so on. We call them crowd or sometimes mass. So there are many different terms to refer to many collectivity people that involve a lot of people together. So now I would talk about another thing that when you think about a lot of people, particularly that consist of society, there are some reference categories. What I'm saying, reference categories, by these characters, people are putting into a different social group. For example, think about like a South Korean country, and there are about 50 million people in South Korea. In one sense, we call them South Koreans, but when you put some reference categories, they put into the different group. The 50 million South Koreans, when considered by these different reference categories, they put into a different group, right? For example, occupation. What do you do for a living? People have all different occupations. If everybody has same occupation, every South Koreans, 18 plus adult population have all the same occupation, the occupation cannot function as considering of different social group divided by different occupation. But people have all different occupations, right? And then the difference makes them to put into a different group, like doctors or professors or cleaners and so on and so on. By occupation, the 50, okay, let's say 18 plus, out of 50 million people, 18 plus adult grown-up population, about 40 million. And they are expected to, whether you are a top boss, whether you are just an ordinary worker, that also can be a reference category that put individuals of society putting into different social groups. And income level, whether it's a household income, individual income, it's also people have different income, whether it's an individual or household income. And wealth, the ownership of buildings and land, right? Some people, they do not, some people, they are not employed, but they have a lot of buildings, like, 2 buildings, 3 buildings, and they own like 10,000 square meters land and so on and so on. So they don't have to work, and they don't have to be employed, to maintain life. And social class. Okay, social class, I mentioned it after the employment status. So whether you are the manager, or whether you are the supervisor, whether you are the company owner, whether you are just ordinary worker, that are supervised and managed by those people who manage or supervise your work process, right? And your gender, whether you are man or whether you are a man or a woman, and race, which race groups, like whether you are the Caucasian or Mongolian or black people, that's the biological difference that put people into different categories. And there are also age groups by which year you're born. You also can put it into different age categories, right? Oh, sorry. And educational attainment. People who have all people that consist of society, people who consist of South Korean society have all different educational attainment level. Some people have very high attainment, with a PhD degree, so and so on. Maybe some people have not experienced that much informal schooling. They may be just, primary schooling. That's the only thing they attained for educational institutions. Some people may have a university degree and so on. And religious affiliation, like whether there's Catholics or Christians or Buddhists, Muslims, and so on and so on. And marital status, whether you are married or non-married or you are divorced or so and so on. And ethnicity is which language you speak at home. By race, there are 3 or 4 groups, but by ethnicity, there are thousand different groups in the world. What about in Korea? How many ethnicity groups in Korea, in South Korea? Any South Koreans in this classroom speak other languages than Korean? In South Korea, any people in this classroom, any South Koreans any speak whether they do speak any other languages than Korean at home? Do you? Korea is a quite unique ethnicity country, right? But then those countries consist of a lot of different ethnic backgrounds, immigrants, like Australia or United States or Canada or New Zealand. They have very different, those countries include very different diverse ethnic groups, right? So you can check different ethnic groups by asking which language do you speak at home. Even if in public space, they probably speak English, but at home they probably speak their own ethnic language, coming from their home country. And at residential places, where do you live? Where do you live in Seoul? Where do you live in Busan or Gwangju or Gangwon? Residential places also can put people into different categories, different social groups. Political ideology, whether you are progressive political thinkers, or you are conservative, you support more conservative political ideas, or you are in between. And political party identification, which political party do you support? Whether you are a supporter of Democratic Party or you are a supporter of. There are many political parties in Korea, but they all the time change the names. It's difficult to remember. So I'm ask you to spend some minutes to identify yourself by these reference categories where you belong to, which group you belong to. For example, occupation, employment status, income, wealth, social class, and gender, race. Can you respond to this reference? Which group do you belong to? Which group you belong to? And if you do identify yourself, which group you belong to, and you can recommend some other categories, reference categories, apart from these I presented. What are the reference categories available to put different thousand individuals putting into different social groups? Okay, I invite you two or three students to respond to the questions of the reference categories. Hona? Yeah. You don't have to respond to all the references, but you can select some reference you want to share with other people. Mm-hmm.
I am partly employed in labor markets since I have a part-time job during the weekend, and I gain like $300 per month, and I'm a female, and I born in 1995, and my education or treatment as I currently attending to this university, and I don't have any relation. I'm not married. My ethnicity and race are first Korean, Asian, and I live in here in Kuocw. And my political ideology is kind of close to Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of on the progressive part. I think that's it for my.
Mm-hmm. Do you come up with any other reference that you can recommend?
My home region in Korea is Seoul, and my sexual orientation is heterosexual, cisgender.
Ah, okay. Good. And Lee? But back home in Hong Kong, do you have any political parties you support? If it's not secret, you can tell us. Not really. So normally you don't vote for any parties, any elections. No?
I focus more on the individual instead of the whole political party.
Oh yeah?
Different members who think one political party, but their rationale may not be the same or
Okay. Do you have any other reference categories you can recommend? By which people belong to different groups? No? Okay. Tanya? It doesn't matter. Lao? Wow. Okay. And you are left wing or right wing or in between, or no interest in politics at all? Or?
I would say Democrat.
And do you have any other reference categories you want to recommend? No? Okay. So, very good, very good. There are also other things you can respond, but because you are now all currently students, so questions that asking about occupations, employment status, and income, wealth, social class, it's probably not relevant to you just for now, but after graduation or sometime later, you have to also, sometimes you are asked to respond to these kind of questions to identify yourself and where you belong to, where do you belong to in which social groups. So the other reference categories, then this one I put in here. Hyuna recommended the sexual orientation, whether it's a homosexual or heterosexual. Yeah? That's it's also becoming quite important reference categories. And also like a hometown, where you were born. It's a different question, it's a different reference than from your current residential places, right? For example, thinking about people living in Seoul, they're probably by hometown, they're probably all different, even if they're living in the same place, occupying the same city space, but then by hometowns where they are born, probably very, very diverse. They're putting into very different social groups. So these are all the categories, these are all the references. Define yourself, define you where you are located in South Korea, where you are located in American society or Australian society or Hong Kong society. These are all the references by which you belong to some groups. That helps you where you are located in a society that you live in. So social class, occupations, and income, it is called socio-economic factors that determine where you are located in a society that you are living, that you live. And social cultural factors, religious affiliation, ethnicity, and marital status, they define you where you are located. And social demographic factors, gender, age groups, and race. These are called socio-demographic factors. And gender, age groups, and race is the one that you are given when you are born. It's given, it's the status given, not you choose. So it is called ascribed status. You cannot choose which year you are born. You just born certain year, and you cannot choose which gender you are born. So that is called ascribed status. And social, cultural, socio-economic factors are considered as achieved status. You can choose through your lifetime. You can choose, right? What kind of work do you do in a working environment, in a work organization? Which position you can promote or not promote? You can choose how much income you can earn, So you can, if you consider socio-demographic, socio-economic, socio-cultural factors all in all, and then you can identify an individual out of 50 million South Koreans, where she or he is in a South Korean society or in an American society, where she is, where he is, right? And another issue, thinking about references and by which people, many different individuals putting into different social groups, is that the social identity. I said 50 million South Koreans living occupying certain places, geographical places. They are called South Koreans. But when you consider them by socio-demographic, socio-cultural, socio-economic factors, they bring into a different brackets, different groups. But once they putting into one, they share the same groups, it is likely for them to have an affinity to each other. The psychology, the emerging, that they feel close to each other, whether by age or by occupation or by gender or by sexual orientation or by religious affiliation. Once they belong to the same group, their psychology somehow emerging that they're feeling close to each other rather than the people belong to different groups than them. So, for example, by religious affiliation, there are Catholics, and Christians, Buddhists, Muslims, and non-religious, so on. But then probably the Catholics, they're close to each other, more close to each other than they feel towards like Christians or non-religious and Buddhist Muslims. So this diversity by different categories, people putting into different groups, that has somehow implication how society works and how society organized, particularly in terms of conflict. Like if if they consider, like Catholics or Christians, if they consider, oh, we are very different, even if living in the same country, even if living in the same city or same in a region, we feel we are very different, and there's somehow conflict between different social groups can emerge, conflict, and also between Muslims and Buddhists or non-religious. For example, I'm making for example, or Christians or non-religious. Half of South Koreans, they identify themselves as non-religious. From the social surveys, by the question asking them which religious affiliation do you belong to, they say I'm no religious institution, and half of them they say either Christian and Catholics and so on, Buddhists and so on. But what I'm saying, if once people putting into different social groups, and if there's emphasized that too much differences emphasized between different groups, there can social conflict can emerge, and that's all the time integration, social integration issue. It's a big issue to cover all the different social groups as a one member for the society to work properly, right? Integration, not division. So how to integrate by all different groups and by all different categories? That's a big question, big challenge for any political leaders and so on. Otherwise, if the conflict all the time contract each other, many different social groups, the whole society as a one unity is very difficult to operate as the way it used to be. So it's an important issue when you think about the constitution of society. So now I will talk about the membership categories, socio-demographic characters, one's socio-cultural characters, one's socio-economic characters, whether that affects one's understandings about environmental problems, whether affects his or her way of behaving in an everyday life. We can think about that, right? So whether the certain membership categories one belongs to affect his or her understandings for environmental problems. And if so, in what way, and if it is different, and why it is different, we should be able to explain why it's different by a person, she or her belongs to different group in relation to environmental issues. If they are different, we should be able to explain why. For example, whether Catholics and Buddhists are different in organizing their everyday life in relation to environmental problems, whether Catholics are more environmental friendly, trying to saving energy consciously compared to Buddhists. If so, we should be able to explain why, And we should be able to identify whether different categories by which people putting into different groups that affect individual who belongs to a certain group. It's affecting those people who do differently in relation to environmental problems and environmental issues. Actually, that's the key research questions in the 90s in the United States when environmental sociology started. It's an academic discipline. That's the key research topics. And then in the 80s, there's another research question. Those who are active as a member of environmental movement organizations, the leaders and activists and members of environmental organization, what characters they share, whether it's mainly female or whether it's mainly male, or they are mainly wealthy people or middle class or working class, whether they are Buddhist. Those profiles, to know the profiles of leaders and activists and members of environmental movement organizations. That was the main questions in the 70s and particularly in the 80s in the United States. So aspects of environmental understandings, so those understand regarding environmental issues, you can break down into some different dimensions: environmental perceptions, awareness and knowledge, and beliefs, and willing to change behaviors for the sake of the environment, and environmentally friendly lifestyles and green behaviors, and civic environmentalism, voting, participations in green movement. You can think of many different dimensions that all relate to one's understandings about environmental issues, environmental problems. Okay, you can break down those understandings into many different dimensions, right? And here is an analytical framework. Here is an analytical framework. So it's an independent variable. It is considered as a cause, the dependent variables. So for example, whether social class, whether you are managers or bosses, top bosses, or whether you are ordinary workers, that affect your perceptions about environmental problems, environmental issues. Whether you are highly educated or less educated, will affect the knowledge about environmental issues or knowledge about natural environment. So these are the dimensions that consist of whole the understandings about natural environment, environmental problems. And these are the one we just looked at, the references by which an individual fit into a different social group: socio-economic characters, socio-cultural characters, and socio-demographic characters. For example, like thinking about whether rich people in different countries, the rich people, where do they belong to by religious affiliation? They are mainly There are many certain religious affiliators. We can also consider the relationship between these characters. So this is the one to affect people in relation as the different dimensions that all consist of environmental understandings. So these are affected by these independent variables that are socio-economic, socio-cultural, and socio-demographic characters of an individual. So I can ask one question now. There are many different environmental organizations in each country, right? In South Korea also, we have a lot of different environmental movement organizations. So think about one specific environmental movement organization, and then you think about this question, whether the membership of a specific environmental movement organization, there's some similar characters of members by socio-demographic or socio-cultural or socio-economic. Or those students from other countries than South Korea, Hong Kong, Australia, United States, you choose one specific environmental organization and you think about the membership. So members of a specific environmental organization you think have some characters in terms of socio-demographic and socio-cultural and socio-economic. Okay, go. Okay, I ask two people to respond to the questions. 서정? 지원? No. What's the name, the behind 선영? Sorry, not behind. Behind, sorry. Okay. What's your name? Sorry. 정인. No, just members, ordinary members. Members, yeah. By social demographic or social cultural and social economic. Have you thought of a specific environmental organization, movement organization? Have you selected? Greenpeace South Korea. You are a member? You are the actor?
No, I have a friend who is working.
Okay, great. Okay. So do you consider South Korean branch of Greenpeace for their membership, for their members, any attraction made by certain social demographic and social cultural, social economic groups?
Interested in many social aspects such as like politics or ecology, environment, like most of those kind of like really active kind of people are more likely to be engaged in such organization, but I don't really know about the economic side.
Yeah, so you can imagine, you can imagine, yeah. You can propose,
Well, I think if someone is having a serious economic problem, I think they would be able to join such, organization because it's kind of really voluntary act, and I heard that they don't really get any earnings from working in that place, especially for the university students.
So you consider.
Economically kind of stable kind of people are more likely to be interested in such subjects.
Okay. So you consider members of South Korean branch of Greenpeace mainly coming from university students and also people with somehow rich economic background.
Somehow like stable, they don't have to like work 24 hours all around the clock to earn for their living.
Okay, so those who work in like a 96 or those who are somehow flexible in organizing their working hours, they are more likely to be a member of Greenpeace in South Korea. Right? That's what you're saying? Okay. 원식? Have you thought of any specific environmental organization in South Korea?
I don't know the exact name, but when I see news about the 4 major rivers project, I see many NGOs related, like opposing the project. I think some of their name was like Environment Movement Union or something like that. When I see the news, it's like most of the members seem to be around their middle ages, 40s, 30 to 50s, around this age. The members seem to be people with their residence near those rivers,
Okay. But you can explain why you consider middle age between 30 and 40, they are more likely to join the against movement for the Fall River project.
I think it's because people under that age, like 20s, they're more oriented in the urban lifestyle, so they don't really have like concerns for the rivers, but for like people in 30s and 40s, when they have their families, they are probably like more, they get more concerned for the surrounding environment, for like the rivers provide their drinking water and things. So, yeah, that's, I think having a family leads to those concerns.
Okay. So marital status, and whether one living near to the river or not, that can be a factor to consist of members of the organization against, the organizing movement against the Fall River project. Good. Okay. Good. So you can also think about other environmental movement organizations, based in Seoul or some other the regions in South Korea or some other countries in the United States or in Japan, in Hong Kong, and whatever. You can raise this kind of questions, and then by acquiring answers, that's quite interesting thing to know. So if you think about analytical framework, for that question I put to you just before, it's for dependent variable, it's a membership of a environmental movement organization, right? The dependent variable. And independent variable, socio-economic, socio-cultural, and socio-demographic, right? And then for the case of the environmental movement organization that against the movement, against the Fall River project, OneSIG recommended that demographic variable is important. Those are aged 30s, 40s, probably more likely than those other age groups to join the groups, to join the environmental movement organization against the Fall River project. And then 서정, right? You 서정, right? 선영, 서정? 정은, okay. 정은 mentioned that, what factors you mentioned that important, 정은, sorry? The economic characters, right? Economic characters who can organize their working hours relatively flexible, and then those who do not have to work many hours. So she recommended economic characters. Once economic characters is more relevant to predict the membership of Greenpeace in South Korea. Good, very good. But you can put many different variables here, and then the reference categories with just before considering independent variable, whether that affect these very dependent variables, right? And for the case we just made a practice is the environmental movement organization membership. Which people by which characters the people by which characters will be more attracted to become a member of a specific environmental movement organization. That's also very good research questions to study. Okay, I explain this later. And then the one I'm going to explain now is because OneSIG just mentioned that age groups, particularly 30 and 40s, are probably more likely to be a member of the environmental organization against the Fall River project. And that's his proposal statement. And we are not quite sure whether it's a correct understanding, correct knowledge of the members of the environmental organization who organized against the movement against the Fall River project. But to know empirically, you interview members of the organization You meet people, members, and then you can ask, which age group they belong to, right? Okay, let's say there are 100 members of the, let's say it's the organization named Environmental Movement Union. So if they have 100 members, if they have 1,000 members, you cannot meet all 1,000 members. So you have to do some sample survey, not the whole people. You cannot meet all of them. So you do select some samples, like 20 or 30 people, and you can ask them, which age group do you belong to, whether you are 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s. And then you can test, here's the hypothesis. Considering the 30s and 40s, probably more likely to be the members of the Environmental Movement Union, you can test your hypothesis, okay? So it's called sample survey. It's called the sample survey. And it's called empirical survey, empirical. So in a desk, reading a lot of writings, articles, you can propose many hypotheses, like, first you have to bring questions first, and then you bring up with your answers, and then you go on testing the answers you propose, whether it's correct or not, by asking those research subjects, by meeting them and asking them, the questions that you want to answer empirically. So that is called empirical survey and sample survey. Sample survey means that you do not ask all the members of the environmental movement organization. You select some people, some members, and then you give them your question, the thing that you want to know, whether it's 30s or 40s, or against your hypothesis, your imagination. There are many 20s, or maybe there are many 50s, right? So the process by collecting the data from your research subject and answering the question that you bring up, that is called doing empirical analysis and doing a sample survey. Okay? And sample survey data involves some statistical analysis. And for now, I just explain very simply, and then if you go to the real output, particularly explaining the multiple regression analysis results, I explain more in detail with the handout I just distribute. So for now, I explain that what P means. P means probability of error. P indicates the probability of error. Yeah, P indicates probability. So P equals 0.10. What does that mean? It's 90% of consistence with the population. So that means that if the members of the Environmental Movement Union is 100, let's say it's 100 people. Some members, they are active, some members just are paying money. Anyway, paying money, only members, some members, they only paying money, like membership fee. But some people are they active, sometimes they come to the workshops and then they bring up their opinions, how to organize movement. and they are sometimes active in the protests and so on, so on, so on. So members also can be broken down by the way they behave in an organization. But anyway, regardless of the active involvement or whatever, we just consider that the total number of members, let's say 100 members of the organization against the Four River Project. The the good way to know their characters by socio-demographic, socio-cultural, and socio-demographic, economic. You just meet all of them, and you ask them whether they are economic and cultural. Economic and cultural demographic characters. You can ask them whether they are men or female, whether they are university graduated or high school graduated. You can ask those questions, right? Or whether they are 20s and 30s and 40s. The ideal way to know the characters of the members is you meet all of them. But sometimes it's impossible, particularly when the membership size is too big, like 10,000, 1,000 or 10,000, it's impossible to meet all of them. Is it possible? It is impossible, right? So you just select some of them. Let's say the membership size is 100, but you just select some of them. Let's say like 30, right? And through statistical analysis, the responses are collected from samples, 30 samples, whether how much matched with the total population, total membership, 100 persons. You can test with the statistical analysis using statistical programs like SPSS and so on. And P 0.10 means that if you sample survey 100 times, okay, this time you select 30 people, and then another 30 people. So let's say you do 100 times, and then the output you select just one sample survey will be likely 90% of them will be the same with the same result coming from the just one sample survey, right? And 0.05 means only 5% are including error. To put another way, if you sample survey 100 times, 95% of sample survey results will be the same, will be the identical with the one sample survey result. And 0.01, if you do sample survey 100 times, 99 times the sample survey results will be matched with the results coming from the one sample survey. So which means that P 0.01 that indicates a very high significant level. You can trust the result of one sample survey, which means that is very much likely to match, to consistent with the facts that come through all the population, all the memberships. So you can, if you do come up with the P equals 0.01 rather than P equals 0.05, this is a much higher significance level. So you can trust one sample survey that reflects the whole characters of the whole population, right? So for doing that statistical survey, you use a analysis of variance that is abbreviated ANOVA, and sometimes you can use multiple regression analysis, and sometimes you can use chi-square test. Have you heard of these terms? Have you heard of these statistical analysis names? Nobody? You, Sewan? Oh yeah? So for now, I'd say clearly P indicates probability of error. Probability of error, right? For example, so the sample survey, the probability of error is important because if population that your research subject is too big, thinking about general population like of South Koreans, 18 plus 40 million, you cannot study all of them. You cannot collect data from all 40 million. So you do sample survey and you select like 1,500, sometimes 1,000, sometimes 2,000. But then you can ask whether the result coming from just one sample that consists of 1,000, how correct the result coming from the 1,000 samples, how much the result represent the whole population. You can ask that kind of question, right? Whether it's the findings, the results are only relevant to the samples that are selected, or the results it can apply to the whole population groups. Understand? Okay, we can think about the environmental movement organization that has 20,000 memberships, 20,000 members. And you select 100. And then the findings indicate statistical analysis said P equals 0.10. And that means that if you select 100 times 100 people, you can do that, right? But that means 90 times of the whole, 90 times out of 100. That means the result will be the same with the result that coming from one sample survey. And that means 10 times probably coming up out of 100 will be the different from the result coming from the one sample survey. Okay? So that means probability of error. Error means that the result you come from one time sample sample survey will be the different if you do 190 times, 10 times will be different from the 19 times. So P equals 0.01. The result indicated by the P equals 0.01 is a more present, indicates much more significant. You can trust to refer to the characters of whole the populations of the whole the population of your research subject. Okay, so just I explain this and then we'll have a break. You can make by different social characters, whether that affects environmental perception, environmental knowledge, and willingness to change behaviors for the environment, and lifestyle patterns, and whether people vote for a green candidate, like a political candidate who have a more pro-environmental ideology and so on, and whether you participate in a like a protest or some political activities that have environmental issues, that include environmental issues. So you can put into these characters, those characters, socio-demographic, socio-cultural, socio-economic, putting into independent variables, And those perceptions, awareness, knowledge, willingness, lifestyle patterns, and voting participation patterns are being put in dependent variables. So we have real data. We have a sample survey data, which was collected in 2010, so about 7 years back. The ISSP is abbreviated for International Social Science Program, and that includes many different countries for specific research topics. So they do every year, the ISSP Social Survey Program, they do every year, but then the research topic changes. But 2010, the topics are environmental problems. And normally like 20 countries and 30 countries, they joined this program, and they used the same questionnaire, same questions, and then they asked different people in different countries. So it's a very good data to compare different countries in a globalization age, because they use the same question, but then sometimes the response patterns are very different, which makes us very interesting. So the one I will show you after the break. After the break is the real output from the sample survey data, in a way how people consider environmental issues, their perceptions, their knowledge and behavior, and so on and so on. Okay, so we'll have a break. We'll begin 12 o'clock. Includes a lot of question items, and then the interviewers meet people who were selected as interviewees, and then the selection was made with a simple random sampling, and among many different sampling methods, simple random sampling is the number one, particularly in terms of whether to trust the response output or not. Those response coming from a simple random sampling is the most trustworthy. So you can trust those responses coming from the simple random sampling is reflect the response that exists in the general population. So what I'm saying that sample survey, that involves you select some samples. And why you have to select some samples? Because the population is too big. So this sample survey involves South Korean adult population, 18 plus, and normally it's 40 million. It's too big. You cannot interview all of them, particularly within certain times, like 1 month or 2 months. Normally the project years like 1 year, 2 years. So you have to do everything within those time limited. And for that reason, you cannot interview all of them that consist of your research subject. And for this case, your research subject is the general population of South Koreans who are 18 plus, and which is about 40 million. So you select some of them. You select 1,576 persons through simple random sampling, and that includes people all of the regions in South Korea. But mainly out of 1,576 samples, mainly the samples coming from Seoul consist of much larger than other regions. Why is that? Why the respondents, those people who are selected out of 1,576, in terms of residential places, those people who reside in Seoul is much larger than those coming from other regions. Why is that? Mm-hmm.
Because most people living in South Korea do live in Seoul.
Yeah, exactly. About 1 out of 4 and 1 out of 5. Yeah, they live in Seoul. That's why out of the total sample, the people who live in Seoul consists of a lot more compared to other other regions. And then the Survey Research Center located in Sungkyunkwan University, they were the key actors. They were charged in main roles, data collection and analysis and the presentation of the analysis outputs and so on. It takes many months. I think you probably spend the whole 1 year, like data collection and data cleaning and analysis and so on. It's it takes a lot of hours, it takes a lot of time. So out of 1,576 people who were selected and who interviewed, who responded to the question items that are given by the interviewers, 1,576 out of 1,576 samples, about 40-70% is a male and about 52% female. Does that reflect the gender structure of the general population? I think so. And age group, some people, about 6 people, they do not respond their age. I don't know why. For them, probably age is a secret. Anyway, those people who said they are 18 up to 39, about 42% belongs to that age categories. And 40, 50, about 36-7%, and 60 plus, about 20%. And educational attainment, primary level schooling, about 14%, and secondary level schooling, including middle school, high school, like a junior, senior. Secondary level schooling, about 40%, 39%, and tertiary level, like a university level, is about 40%, and postgraduate is about 6%. And monthly house income indicated by United States dollar of United States, American dollar. So monthly household income. So income that are all put together of all the household members. If a husband and wife, both of them work, and their 2 incomes are combined, and if husband, wife, and maybe children, they work, those are income all together. So those people, they say their monthly income is less than $1,000, about 13%. But surprisingly, some people, they say over 10,000 American dollars, which means about 1,000만 원. 1,000만 원 in Korean. About 4% of them, they say they earn 1,000만 원 per month, about $10,000 per month. Rich. And about 4%, they say they earn 7,500 and 9,000 something, about 4%. So which means about 8% of households in South Korea, they are quite rich, earning more than 7,500 plus. And those income categories between a quite equal distribution, about from 1,000 and 2,500 US dollars, 19%, and 2,500 US dollars and up to 4,499, about 28%, $4,500 and 7,400, about 18%, right? So in Korea, there's quite a disparity in income level, right? There's a big issue, the disparity, between those people who are very rich, and still there are some quite large group of who are poor, disparity, income disparity, wealth disparity, And self-ascribed status of social stratification. So people are asked which social stratification you belong to. So they judge themselves whether they're the bottom or the lower group, or the middle, or the upper, or the top. About 0.3%, they say they consider in the top stratification in South Korea in terms of income and wealth when they consider themselves. And about 44% they say they belong to the middle stratification, and about 11% they say upper. And then about 7% they say they belong to the lower stratification. Political ideology, equally one-third, right? So the left wing, they say I'm left wing. 31%, I'm the right wing, 30%, in between 32%. So one-third. Interesting, right? And religiosity. Religiosity we measure by how often do you go to a religious service, whether it's a church service or the religious service, whether you go to temples or church or Catholic church for religious services, for observing religious service. How often do you go per week? And we consider those who participate religious services often. We consider they have a higher, stronger religiosity, right? And religious affiliation: Buddhism 24%, Christianity 24%, Catholic about 7%, and other groups than Buddhism, Christianity, and Catholic is 1%. Non-religious, they say 43%. 43%. Okay, so these are the socio-demographic, socio-cultural, and socio-economic characters of the samples selected, 1,576 samples, when they put into different categories by these different references, right? Remember these numbers, it's a quite interesting indicator to know the general population in South Korea. Particularly about 43% in Korea, they say I do not belong to any religions. And about one quarter is a Christian, either Christians, either Buddhist. And Catholic is about 7%. And this is also a good indicator who earn monthly income $10,000, about 4% of a South Korean household, about 4%. And these are also good indicators who earn, the postgraduate degree, who finished postgraduate degree. Out of total population, about 4%. And these are the response patterns to the question, which states that overall, how much are you concerned about environmental problems? The concern about, are you worried? How much are you worried about? And total, out of the total sample, 1,476, right? 1,576. About 2.7%, okay, let's say 3%, they say, I'm not worried at all about environmental problems. About 3% of people, they said, I'm not worried about environmental problems at all. But most of them, they say, I'm worried, I'm concerned about environmental problems. I'm concerned, I'm worried about environmental problems. And particularly, about 27%, 1 out of 3, they say, I'm very much worried, I'm very much concerned about environmental problems. And more or less about 25%. So if you combine these and these percentages to indicate those people who are highly concerned about environmental problems in South Korea, is about, how much would it be? Will be? If you plus this and this, can you do that for me? Because my brain is not working properly now, How much? If you plus and combine these and these percentages. How? 62%? So more than 0.5% they are concerned about environmental problems in South Korea, right? So people are different in terms of the degree of their concern about environmental problems. Some people are very much worried, very much concerned about environmental problems, and some people say they are not concerned about environmental problems at all, right? So we ask the same question to the people in different countries, like Japan, some European countries, and United States, and so on. And probably there are some different response patterns across the different countries, right? But for South Korean case, we obtained these response patterns. And this is a monetary commitment. That means that you can use your money, you can give your money if government can solve the environmental problems. You are ready to give your money as a tax or as a donation or whatever, if government can solve the problem. So willingness to reduce living standards for improving the quality of natural environment. What does that mean? Reduce living standards. What does that mean specifically? What does that mean? Reducing living standards for improving the quality of natural environment. What does that mean specifically? In what way you can reduce your living standards for improving the quality of natural environment? 지원? Difficult? Why to reduce the living standards is related to improving the quality of natural environment? Okay, Jiwan, can you respond to me? No? Okay, Hyunyoung.
For example, if I was to use public transportation or ride a bike to school, it would be harder for me than to drive a car to school. In that case, it would take me more time and energy, like physical energy, for me to live in a more environmentally friendly way to walk or ride a bike to school. So that would be like reducing the living standards.
Okay, so you are ready to give up, owning the private car, right? And then instead you use public transport for improving the quality of natural environment. What else? What kind of other activities that are relevant to reducing living standards for improving the quality of natural environment?
Maybe not using as much electricity or moving into a smaller house, or even like shutting off your heat or air conditioning when you're not at home.
Yes. So energy saving the efforts at home, energy saving effort. Because sometimes it's quite nuance, sometimes the conscientious way of saving energy is sometimes very, you have to pay attention, And also you reduce the number of refrigerators or the white goods, like microwaves and computers, all the electricity items, those household goods that needs power, energy power, that needs electricity. So that means you are willing to give up, owning some the household goods that ask for electricity. If you have that, your life is quite convenient. You can enjoy your life in a very convenient way, but then that has somehow implication for the quality of natural environment. As we learned last week, 2 weeks ago, energy, we learned about energy and all those household goods items that need electricity, and electricity generated coming from the energy sources or totally coming from nature, either coal or petrol or nuclear or wind, right? Capito? So out of 7%, they say they are very much willing. They are very much willing to reduce their living standards. So they are willing to give up owning a private car. They are willing to reduce the energy use at home. They are willing to pay extra effort, extra attention to reduce whatever they ask for energy and so on. And about 35% they say they're fairly much. But then this is 13.2%. 13.2% of they say they're not at all willing to reduce their living standards for improving the quality of natural environment. About 13%. And 26% they say not much. They are not much willing to reduce their living standards. And about 17% they are more or less willing to. It's a good news or bad news for environmental movement organization to attract membership. This is a good news or bad news? Good news? Good news, I think. So over 0.5%, they're somehow willing to, right? Very much or fairly much, more or less. And the second question item that states that willingness to pay more tax for improving the quality of natural environment. And about 7%, they say they are very much willing to. And about 42%, they say fairly much, and 15% more or less, and 20% not much willing to, and not at all, about 13%. In the third question item states that willing to sacrifice more cost for improving the quality of natural environment. So apart from tax, you can also spend some other money for improving the quality of natural environment. And then about 8%, about 9%, they are very much, and about 50% fairly much, and so on. So you can say about half of the population, they are in terms of the monetary commitment for improving the quality of the natural environment, quite willing to. About half of them, right? At least you can say half of them. Mm-hmm. More than half of them, more than 50% of them. And this one is about practicing everyday behaviors in an environmentally friendly way. And the first question asked whether they avoid buy certain products out of concern about the environment. So their consumer behavior, their purchasing behavior, when they choose certain products out of concern about the environment, whether they avoid buy certain products. So it's about partly practicing consumer citizenship. So out of concern about the environment, whether you do not choose certain products. And that indicates, the different colors indicate the frequency, always, often, and occasionally, and never. Right? So for each question, this pale green indicates always. always they do something, behaviors that have an environmental implication. They have in an environmentally friendly way. Okay, I ask you to read each numbers, and then you conclude. You conclude from the response patterns what you can say about Korean publics, about Korean population, in terms of practicing everyday behaviors. What you can say from the response patterns that presented in this figure. Can you do your work on your own? Okay, I ask two persons to respond to my question. In what way you can conclude about practicing everyday behaviors in an environmental friendly way among South Korean publics from the response patterns that represent in this figure. Killa, what can you conclude? What do you observe?
It's not like super conclusive, but a lot of people are just sort of occasional behaviors. Like most people are just in the middle, sort of thing.
Okay.
Let's just say it's like not super great, but not terrible.
In the middle.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's Asian way you consider? That's Asian way you consider?
Well,
In the middle.
I don't really know, but we're kind of just like super clued in on
Okay.
ideas,
Uh-huh.
things.
Sure. Okay. I understand. Mm-hmm. What else? Sunseok, what do you observe? What you can say about South Koreans practicing everyday behaviors in an environmental friendly way from the response patterns from this figure? What can you say? What do you want to say?
Trying to think about environment when it doesn't need any financial public.
Sorry? Can you raise your voice for me? Can you raise your voice a little bit for me? Mm-hmm.
I think people try to think about environment when they 지정적인 기회비용이 없으면 환경에 대해서 생각하려 하는
From this figure, you can conclude that way, based upon which response pattern?
people, a lot of people try to recycle things.
Ah, okay. I understand. Okay, 현직. Okay, can you also, you can have your say about the practicing everywhere. What do you want to say? What we can say about the from these response patterns?
I think people try to behaviors in a environmentally friendly way in their consuming behaviors. And I think because of it, consuming is their almost only realm that they can control. Consuming
Mhm. Depending upon which response patterns, you can conclude it that way.
I think to avoid buying consumer products and
last two. I come up with my thing from first and last two criteria.
The response patterns then into behaviors, right?
And first criteria.
Okay, I understand. Good, okay, thank you. For me, I conclude this way. These are all the behaviors, buying, purchasing behaviors, and the energy saving behaviors, and then the car driving behaviors, and then the ways to organize the littering behaviors. To me, among South Korean people, in terms of impact the behaviors upon natural environment, that has different degree of real practice. So some behaviors are very challenging to do in an environmental behavior, particularly the car driving behavior. You see the car driving behavior, to reduce car driving. Most of people, one out of they say they never done this, and about another 30% they say occasionally. So for South Koreans to reduce car driving, private car driving, is a quite challenge to change in an environmental friendly way, right? Because always those people who say always, it's only 8%, and often it's compared to other behaviors who have practiced the green way, it's about 20%. So I can conclude some behaviors for South Koreans, it's very challenged to change their behaviors in a green way, particularly reducing car driving out of concern about the environment. But then some behavior, like this, to litter glasses and cans of plastic, is for recycling, to participating recycling the programs. It has been quite popular among South Korean publics. Why it's different from other behaviors in terms of transforming their behavior into environmental friendly way. It's about majority of people, they already have participated in recycling program. Why is that? So when they throwing waste, they organize different waste, putting into different bins, right? Different waste bins. And that's a quite common practice across South Korean publics. Always 63%, 24%, often. So majority, you can say over 80%, But why is that? Why is it so popular? But this is not popular. Why this the
The government encourages people to do this activity.
The government do not encourage for reducing car driving?
They do, but not as actively as they encourage people. For example, it's been encouraged for a long period of time and very actively, and it feels like it gives kind of like people this feeling that they're doing something for the environment immediately. But for the other activities, they have to put their own time and money to save the environment. But the result or the activity itself doesn't give after that feeling of achievement.
they feel like, oh, I did something good for the environment.
And also that doesn't cost them too much, like sacrifice, right? From their pleasure or from, that doesn't cost them that much money, like, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I realized something else about the other data. For example, like, reducing car driving, it requires people to put their own time. And also for buying certain products that are considered of the environment, it doesn't give people like the actual, they don't get the feeling that they're doing something for the environment.
Which one, sorry?
For the first one, avoid buying certain products.
Ah,
I don't
okay.
think people get this idea that by not buying this product, I will like help the environment.
Ah, okay.
Actual connection.
Okay, understand.
The more they feel like their action is impacting the environment, the more they participate. That's only my hypothesis.
Good. Okay. I like it. Okay. I have a question. Like, for example, now, you know, there are some grocery stores who sell only organic products. There's some brand, like, you know, some green store brand, like a 초록마을, you know, 녹색마을, not 녹색마을, 초록마을 and 자연드림, so on in Korea also. But I'm asking, when people buy those products from that kind of, you know, organic, you know, the green stores, would they consider themselves they are helping natural environment, you know, or they consider my environment, my body, my health will be improved, will be better, which they would concern more, or which feeling they would receive more when they purchasing organic products in organic stores. Which the thinking would come up to more strongly to those consumers who buy the green products in green product stores with that kind of brand names. What do you think? Sun-Seok, have you ever purchased any product from those green stores? Never? What about your mom? Never ever. Okay. Any person in this classroom or any
My mom's closest friend is really deeply involved in the Hansalim company.
Oui.
Then I think for most mothers who do the grocery shopping, they're more or less very much interested in feeding their children less chemical additives from the packaged products. So I think it's more about health issues rather than to save the environment.
Okay. But can they be the target for leading groups to get people encouraging to change their purchasing behaviors environmentally friendly in a green way? I mean, they will be. I mean, I'm asking about the possibility. Will they become a kind of leading group to people motivating to buy those green products, you know, from those green stores and so on? Many are quite cheap. Quite expensive. You know, I'm also a member. You know, but then kind of experiment. How do I feel and so on. You know. But then the taste also somehow different from, you know. But in general, it's more expensive. But that kind of question came to me, and then also my observation. Also, I have friends. They quite, you know, the very strict way of only buying groceries from that stores, and she has the kids with the troubles with the skins, with atopy. It's a very strict way of buying those groceries from the stores. Anyway, we can conclude. At least I observed that some behaviors it can be quite popular across the people in South Korea, but some people quite challenged to be coming across the population. And then when it's a good way to find, why some behaviors are quite difficult to change, and why some behaviors are quite had to change in an environmental friendly way. And another outcome from different survey, and the number of samples is 500, and there was data collected in 2006. And you can also come up with the same response patterns to the one you see in this figure. Sorry. But there's some other response, some other questions. That's why I brought this also. For example, holidaying nearby residential place, holiday behaviors. Why holiday behaviors relate to natural environment? Holidaying nearby your place or not far away from your residence place. Why does that relate to natural environment? 지식? Holiday behaviors, whether to have holidays near to your residential place or far away from residence place, in what way does it relate to natural environment? 지식? Having holiday. Now South Koreans are very much eager to have holidays, But then why having holidays near to home or far away from home? In what way does it have some connection to natural environment? Okay, what about Vidiro? Can you respond?
Yes, the
Carbon emission from? Sorry, I cannot hear you.
If you holiday near your residential place, then you can either drive, which emits less carbon emissions than when you take an airplane.
Great, right. That's the correct answer. Right. If you travel far away from your home, you have to take a flight, right? But then if you can have a holiday near home, you can use public transport, or just drive a shorter way than taking a far away. And that all asks, the amount of energy used, and also the amount of carbon emissions from fossil fuels, like petrols, right? And another one regarding the private car use. This is also interesting. Everything is black. This is 18.4% of people, they say they switch a private passenger car to a smaller one. To a smaller one. About 18% they say already they have done, and 15% they say they have done that yet, but very much willing to do, and about 24% they have not done that yet, but probably to do that way. But 90% they said not yet, but difficult to do that. And those people who do not who do not have a car, there's some missing numbers here. And there's also a question of avoiding purchasing the product over packaged, too much packaged About 40% they say they're already in practice. And about 22% they say, but they will be able to practice. So it's buying product over package. It also can be quite popular. It's a possibility to become popular across the population. But some people it's not that way. Okay. This one is about civic engagement. Civic engagement. Whether you have participated in a protest for environmental problems. So the protest has the themes of environmental problems. For the past 5 years, the question asked respondents, for the past 5 years, have you participated in a protest for environmental problems? About 3% they have done that. And majority of them, they say not at all. And donating money to environmental organization, about 7%, and about 93% they have done that yet. For the past 5 years, so when you ask people in 2010, for the past 5 years, have you ever donated money to any environmental organization? And about 7% of them they have done at least once. And petition, signing a petition for environmental problems, about 16% they have done that, and the rest they say they have never ever have done that. And what you can conclude about civic engagement among South Koreans for environmental issues, what you can conclude? Quite limited, right? The participation, civic participation for environmental issues was quite limited. Do you imagine there are some countries for this question, like have we ever participated in protest for the past 5 years? It will be any country who shows the number for this have done that, like 30% or over 10%, 15%. Which country would it be like that? So at least South Korea, about 3% of them they have joined any protest for environmental problems. But there will be any country whose population have joined civic protest for the issues of environmental problems, like over 10% and 50% and 20%. There will be. And if so, which country would be having that kind of response pattern? And it's a monetary commitment for environmental organization, and it's just signing a petition, right? Mm-hmm. So you need some active involvement, but this one is quite passive. You just sign, But then if you do this way, you have to quite active commitment. You have to go to a certain place where the protests take place. But this one you just sign, and you just send the money, so on. Anyway, in terms of civic engagement, different behaviors receive different level of participation. Okay, now I'll talk about the multiple regression tables and in what way you can read multiple regression tables. Okay, if you remember the bar chart, the response patterns, some people are very much worried about, very much concerned about, and some people are not much at all concerned about. But if you're concerned with the characters of gender and religiosity and political identity and religious affiliation, if you consider that way, who would come up having more concern and less concern? So I'll ask you first to have a look at the handout about how to read multiple regression analysis table. Okay. I ask you from Damaris to read each paragraph 1, 2, 3, each person. Okay. Starting from Damaris, please.
Multiple regression analysis is a statistical analytical method that is used to determine pure and relative effects of variables that are used for predicting effects on a dependent variable.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple regression consists in predicting the strengths of a dependent variable and certain impact of a dependent variable.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, the greater the coefficient, the stronger is the impact of an independent variable, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
The numbers in the parentheses in the tables distributed in the environmental sociology class indicate standard deviation factor SD. SD is a statistical value that indicates the overall dispersion variation among values of a variable. If the SD value is great, it means the distribution of values within the group is significantly dispersed.
Number 5. Number 5. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's the main principles that regarding the multiple regulation analysis. So for concern about environmental problems, those characters, gender and age and political ideology, religiosity is the determinants to predict the concern about environmental problems. Gender and age and political ideology and religiosity, that's the important characters that can be used to predict whether a person higher concern, stronger concern, or weak concern about environmental problems. So female compared to men have a higher concern about environmental problems. So if you go back to the bar chart, they indicate different degree for concern about environmental problems. These are probably more likely to be men, these people. And these people probably women. And multiple regression analysis is used to select, to find real factors, real predictors that has a stronger impact upon dependent variable. To know the pure effect of an independent variable upon a dependent variable. So the way you read these multiple regression tables, first, okay, female compared to man are more likely to have a stronger concern environmental problems. Okay, being female, being a woman, is a more constant predictor to have a stronger concern about environmental problems compared to man. And then second is age. Whether you are older, whether you are younger, it also relates to having a stronger concern about environmental problems, having less stronger concern about environmental problems. But here is the older, not younger. The older, they are more concerned about environmental problems. So you can say older women compared to young men, they are more likely to be more concerned about environmental problems. And politically left-wing compared to the in the between, they are more willing to, they are more concerned, they are more likely to have a greater concern, stronger concern about environmental problems. So the numbers in here, they called multiple regression beta coefficients. Beta coefficients. this 0.081, 0.09. And what does that mean? If the number is higher, if the number is higher, that means the impact level of the impact level compared to other characters, other factors, it's much greater. So for example, in model 3, the impact of gender, being woman, it's much stronger than being which age group you belong to. Here's 0.097 and 0.669, so it's much it's bigger than the impact of the age groups, age. And having the political ideology left wing compared to the center, they are more likely to have more concern about environmental problems. And those who have a higher religiosity, which means those people who have attend church service or Buddhist temple service, or whatever religious services, who compared to those who do not attend religious services often, those who attend religious service often, they are more likely to have a stronger concern about environmental problems. So if you think about the bar chart that shows the response pattern for different degree of whether more concern, no concern, in the between. If you consider with the different characters, either demographic, social, economic, or social cultural, the gender and then age and political ideology and religiosity, they are the important predictors to know different degree of concern about environmental problems. So the people who are older, and the people who are women, and the people who attend religious service often, and who have left wing, they are more likely to have stronger concern about environmental problems. Okay, so in terms of attracting members for environmental organization, you can utilize this response pattern. So probably you target women than men, and you target like older, not younger, and you target people with higher religiosity, and then left wing. There might be much more likability to receive membership, to increase membership rate. If you want to raise your membership sizes for environmental organization, those people who come up with significantly, it will be better than those people who are targeted. Okay, so that the older explanation I just made is stated in number 6. So Lee, can you read the statement 6? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, concern about environmental problems. And willingness to pay more tax and price and to reduce living standards out of concern about the environment. The summary for the response patterns that is stated in the number 7. Soman Ta. Mm-hmm. So I can say that concern about environmental problems and willingness to pay a monetary commitment, it has different social bases to support. Here is a female, but for this monetary commitment is a male, not female. So which means in which aspect the environmental issues you look at, it is somehow likely to have a different social basis that are likely to support. So for monetary commitment, a male compared to female are more willing to pay more tax and money and so on. And as consistent with the finding for the concern about environment, still the older, not younger. And left wing and the middle upper stratification and highly religious, they are more willing to do monetary commitment. But Buddhists, compared to the non-religious group, they are less willing to. Okay? And for the variable practicing everyday behaviors in an environmental friendly way, the person behind, the Somantang, what's your name? You, what's your name? Yuan Ting, can you read the statement 8? You do not have this? But why you are keeping? But why you do not ask me to give this? You do not have this? Yeah. Can you ask the statement 8? Sorry, can you read the statement 8? What do you mean no? Okay. The person sitting next to you, can you read the statement 8? What does silence mean? Yes or no? Or can or cannot? Okay, Sewan, can you read the statement 8?
Practicing everyday behaviors in an environmentally friendly way. Gender, generation, educational attainment, religiosity are the significant predictors. Female, the older, the highly educated, and the highly religious are those that practice environmental behaviors in an environmentally friendly way more often compared to their counterparts. Also, those who are more concerned about environmental problems and more willingness to pay tax and price for improving the quality of natural environment are also likely to practice more often environmental behaviors.
Okay, so female, the older, and the highly educated, and the highly religious, they come up, they are likely to be more practicing everyday behaviors in an environmentally friendly way. Okay, so the at least the age is important. Age for predicting one's concern about environmental problem or willingness to make monetary commitment or practicing everyday behaviors. So far, age is important character. Age. Remember, and gender is also important. But somehow not consistent direction. For practicing everyday behaviors, concerned about problems, compared to men, it's a woman who are more likely to have a stronger concern and who are more likely to practice everyday behaviors in an environmental friendly way. But for making willingness to pay monetary commitment, it is men, not women. But I don't know why. And number 9, civic engagement, like participating a protest and signing a petition and sending money to environmental organization, whether those behaviors are different by different categories, different characters. 현직. Number 9.
Practicing civic engagement in important issues. Generation, educational attainment, household income, political ideology, religiosity, religious affiliation are the significant predictors. The older, the highly educated, the richer we household income, the left-wing and highly religious are those that practice civic engagement more actively than their counterparts. However, compared to the non-religious, Christians are less active in engagement. Also, those with greater concern about environmental problems and those with greater willingness to pay are more likely to practice actively civic engagement in environmental issues.
Okay, so once again, the age is important character, age. Quite persistently, age comes up significant determinant to predict one's concern about environmental problems and willingness to pay, and then practicing everyday behaviors in a green way and civic engagement issue. Age is an important predictor for knowing one's understanding about environmental issues, whether it's a concern about environmental problems, whether it is the monetary commitment or green behavior or civic engagement. Age is important, right? And for civic engagement, educational attainment is also important, and income level and political ideology, and also religiosity is important, right? So next step is you should be able to explain why the older compared to the younger, they come up, you know, quite strongly related to environmental issues. You should be able to explain, you know, why, and why the highly religious compared to the less religious. You should be able to explain why. Okay? So conclusion. Xiang, okay, you can. The first statement for conclusion. Can you read? No, and then this you. Second statement. 지식.
According to ISFP, P10 survey data, testing
1,500. Okay, thank you. So, and then you should be able to memorize some important predictors for different dimensions of environmental understanding, right? Concern about environmental problems, monetary commitment, and practicing everyday behaviors in a green way, and civic engagement, they have a different predictors, different characters that come up with relevant. Okay? So next week, we'll think about global environmental politics. Okay, that's all for today.